It's so weird how like the couch and that blanket have become so iconic. That could be in the Smithsonian.
I think Archie's chair is, so maybe their couch original one is.
What else would belong?
The TV from The Simpsons.
That's a cartoon. Welcome back, everyone, to S1E1, the show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and forgetting anything we might know about the future run of that show, rate it and decide if it's a show we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about The Conners. The Conners will have 112 episodes after its 7th and final season completes on ABC. Today we're talking about episode 1, which is called Keep On Truckin', originally airing October 16th, 2018. To get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me, as always, the boys, Joe, Ferg, Nick, and Gordo. What's going on, guys?
Hey, I was on Ambien.
Joey is mostly depressed and kind of sarcastic.
I was going to say, if there's a is a boy that describes this podcast, it would be Joey.
I'm so dark and brooding. I'm also super sick this episode, so I sound like I'm dark and brooding. I have no fucking energy.
And we wear mostly black.
Oh, yeah. I am wearing all black right now.
Oh, then I don't like Joe.
Good, because we're basically, we just watched a 22-minute funeral.
Yeah, this show.
This also doesn't feel like 7 years ago. Doesn't it kind of feel like all this Roseanne stuff just happened? Not just happened, but not 7 years ago?
Yeah, time's going by quick. So before we even get into any of that, I just want to say welcome to week 4 of Fanuary. This is Shane's pick, and I've said this to him privately. I want to say this publicly. I apologize. I wrote the wrong name on the graphic. So anyone who thought it was a different person's pick, it was not. It was Shane's. Shane has been a great fan for a long time, so I feel extra bad about it. He's won when we did the live show. We sent him a care package, and he sent us a bunch of good show suggestions. And one of the few people that believes that Gordo eats lasagna on Mondays. So I'm sorry.
How could you fuck up Justin's pick?
It's not. It's
you
Shane's
just
pick.
fucked it up.
You just fucked it up.
Oh, Gordo.
He was so excited that he had something to say, too. But sorry to Shane. And we are doing The Conners. Now, you picked The Conners. It's funny because this is a show that I think internally we've talked about a bunch and didn't know how to attack it. And even right now, as we are recording, I still don't know how to attack it because it's such an interesting situation versus like any other reboot or thing of that nature. So, I mean, just to give the most brief explanation of what gets you to this season, this episode. We have Roseanne, iconic show. We covered it a long time ago. Go back and listen to that episode if you want. Roseanne goes 9 seasons in its original run in the 90s. Now, we flash forward almost 20 years. Roseanne gets continued. So they just bring the show back after all these years, original cast and everything. They do 1 season of Roseanne. Then when that season ends, Roseanne, through situation, tweeted something out. The network was not happy.
It was Ambien.
They fired her, and then they decide to continue the show without her. Now, in fairness, Roseanne did sign her rights to the show away. She did that. And to Roseanne's credit, she did that for all the people working on the show. She didn't want to take jobs away from so many people. But she signs her rights away. Now, ABC continues on as The Conners, which is just Roseanne without Roseanne. But this episode that we're covering, although technically episode 1 of The Conners, is really like season 2, episode 1 of the reboot, which is really season 11, episode 1 from Roseanne. Because, and we've talked about this, it's so weird because there are other times that there's reboots and there's spin-offs. But this episode basically is like the last episode of season 10 of Roseanne happens, and this is like 2 days later. And same set, some people, everything. Just one person's not there anymore.
And what's really weird about it, too, is if you remember the last season and the finale of Roseanne's original run, that's a fucking crazy fever dream of a weird writing.
I mean, technically...
That's a whole separate thing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, technically, Dan's dead.
No, that's a dream.
No, it's a dream.
So, no, well...
It's not a dream, it's she writes a book.
But she writes him as alive.
to go back.
Oh, right. You're right.
To the finale of Roseanne's original run, we find out that Dan did die after he had his heart attack. Dan in the original run of the show has a heart attack, survives, then they win the lottery, all this stuff happens. We find out that is all just Roseanne's fiction after Dan died. Dan does die at the end of Roseanne proper. We ignore that to bring the show back. So Dan's back. Dan's back to life. That didn't happen.
She died, or her husband dies in her fiction to make it all better is, I fought Steven Seagal on a train and my sister married Ernest. It is the fucking weirdest season of all time.
It's a weird season. So they kind of just scrapped that. And even with this, forget even the Connors, but in season 10 of Roseanne, and I'm sorry if this is confusing to people listening, there's a lot of things that get scrapped coming into this new era. Like, don't forget, like, Roseanne and Dan have another kid. That's gone.
Oh, yeah, what, Jerry?
Yeah, Jerry Garcia.
Yeah, baby Jerry Garcia.
Then Jackie has a son. Jackie's son is gone. There's all these weird things. It does end with Harris. Harris does continue on. Harris was born at the end of season 9. She does, the age is a little off, but she does return. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they basically like pick up from like the middle of Roseanne. You know what I mean? Like they just kind of like, here's the heart of the show. We're going to just pick up from there. It would almost be like if they brought The Office back and it was just like, hey, Michael never left. He just like, we're back. He never left. Forget those last couple of seasons.
Would that be the worst thing in the world?
If the show ended with her becoming a writer, but she's never alludes to that. And then the reboot, she's not even a failed writer. It's just never talked about.
Well, there is a funny thing. So to prep for this episode, because I was so like, my brain's racing. I'm like, I don't even know how to attack this because it is technically S1E1. But it's not. So I'm like, I'm trying to do as much back history homework as I can. So I told you guys, I watched the conclusion of the original run of Roseanne. Then I watched the first episode of season 10. And then I watched this, just to kind of catch myself up a little bit. In the season 10 reboot season, the first episode, there is a minute where Dan picks up Roseanne's like book or script or whatever and goes like, it's pretty good, but like, I didn't like when you killed like me or whatever it was. Like he makes a reference to it. I forget if he says me or the main character, the guy or whatever, but there is a joke about it.
Oh, okay.
And there's a little joke in the beginning of that too. If you remember, he wakes up with he has like the sleep apnea mask. He's like, I thought you were dead. It's like, why does everyone think I'm dead? But yeah, so with all that in mind, as we talk about this show, we are talking about the first episode of The Connors, but it feels weird because if I think anyone watching the first episode of The Connors, we say we go in fresh with we forget anything we might know about the future run and everything. But I think the backstory is assumed that you know. They don't think you're watching S1E1 The Connors without having just watched season 10 of Roseanne.
There is 0 character introductions. It is 100% assumed that you know who everybody is.
Yeah. So now as The Connors develops, like I said, it's completing. It has like a 6-episode, 7 season that's about to start in a couple months, and when that's over, that's the end of the show. So it'll end up 112 episodes, 7 seasons. But over 100 episodes, we do eventually grow this universe. We meet new characters, things happen, the show evolves. But this episode we're covering right now is just Roseanne. It's Roseanne with Roseanne not in it. So it's very interesting to cover because I don't think any intention from any production in the network is that you don't know what just happened before this point.
It'd be so interesting to be able to watch this though with that.
Yeah.
Without that knowledge of this other shit.
But I feel like it's not like they wouldn't even like consider that would be a thing. It would be so odd to watch this episode and from our perspective when rating it and analyzing it, do you keep that in mind that they expect us to know what's going on with Roseanne? Because as a fresh show, it's like, I think it's almost impossible to like what's going on not knowing the backstory. It's just too, you're in the middle. It's a dark episode. I mean, we're going to talk about it.
It's for sure like the darkest, most bummery thing we've ever done.
So I think we have to assume when talking about it that we know that this stuff has happened, which is a little outside of what we normally do because usually we go in with no backstory. I want to go over a few things real quick. IMDb 5.9, which is a little lower than I expected. Rotten Tomatoes 93 critic, 4.47 audience. So again, the audience scores are lower for the show than I expected.
Yeah, because people don't want a Roseanne show without Roseanne.
Well, we're going to talk about it. We'll definitely talk about it. I'm someone who does watch the Conners. And Joe, I know you watch it as well. The rest of you guys, did you watch it when this happened out of curiosity? Did you watch anything?
I watched this episode, and I think the one that followed.
So me and Joe, I think I'm pretty much caught. I might be a couple episodes back, but I'm fairly caught up on this whole 100+ episode run they've had.
Yeah, I'm fully caught up.
Yeah, this is on just about every streamer. It's a very popular, like, as far as modern sitcoms. So it's weird to see that the audience score is so low, but it's had success in ratings to the point where it's gone 7 seasons. So it's like, maybe it's just the internet. You know what I mean? Obviously people, that's how that kind of goes sometimes.
I was going to say, I think that sounds like a brigading.
Yeah, that could be a lot of people that are just upset about the situation with Roseanne. There's a very unique circumstance.
I also bet a lot of people who are like, fuck this, I'm not watching Roseanne without Roseanne, still watch it.
Oh, yeah, hate watching's a real thing.
Yeah.
Berg, you're the king of hate watch.
Berg's hate watched more shows than he's actually enjoyed.
Not this one, though, believe it or not. Maybe I will after we covered it.
Now, this isn't completely unprecedented. I wanted to mention, in 1986, there was the show Valerie that starred Valerie Harper, and then they fired her after a few seasons, and the Hogan family became the continuation of that and went on for a few seasons. So there
Hogan's
is
Heroes?
Nope. the Hogan family. So this is a situation. There are other situations where the main character is removed from a show and the show kind of continues on. And it's obviously difficult when that character happens to be the namesake, which is what happened with Valerie as well.
Sort of with All in the Family, too, because they kill off Edith and the show becomes Archie Bunker's place.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole, like...
That's not the same.
They could have kept it... Yeah, they could have kept it All in the Family, but I think they just wanted to refresh it a little bit to... Because you gotta take him out of the house now because she's not there.
Yeah, he has to own a weird corner bar.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get into it. This is just kind of a different situation for us, and so bear in mind. So, man, I'm already like a little lost here. We kind of find out with season 10 of Roseanne, where we leave off this family. We find out that Roseanne has a problem with pain pills.
She got knee surgery, right?
Yes. So she needs knee surgery. Yeah. She's on the pain pills. She has an addiction problem with them. So she's kind of struggling where she needs them. She's actually in pain, but she has addiction and she's over, and that's where we kind of end that season.
Okay.
Do you want to get into the situation?
I don't want to over delve into it because I feel like that's a whole different conversation, and it's, regardless of how anyone feels, like I just think that it's gonna basically.
I'll play devil's advocate. I've taken pills and drank and done some weird fucking shit, man. I don't know. Like, his brain starts going kaputski.
That's the thing. It's like I don't want to speak on her behalf. I mean, I think the tweet itself, without getting into the specifics, I think was in poor taste. Whether the Ambien stuff, I can't speak to. I have not been drunken on Ambien. I think that there is an issue where knowing, like Roseanne, when they rebooted the season to begin with, there was a thing where they wanted her off Twitter. They were nervous about things she was saying. She's always been very outspoken, and I just think with time, there's a whole dark side of comedy on her. If you ever watched that on Vice, that was a really good episode. She very much kind of believes a lot of things she reads, and she's just an older, I don't want to get too into it. There's some people don't do the homework sometimes, but regardless, what she tweeted wasn't great, and the network didn't want her around anymore. And then it just kind of what followed. The cast was kind of weird. Like
Sara Gilbert really pushed to get rid
Sara
of her.
Gilbert very much openly denounced. Like, I don't agree with what she said. She doesn't speak for me or the cast. And I think Sara Gilbert, I can't speak for her. I know she was like a big part of the reboot happening, and maybe felt like it would reflect on her more. So I don't know. I mean, Roseanne was not happy. Roseanne has kind of openly said she felt like Sara Gilbert stabbed her in the back. But then you also have, John Goodman, who did go to bat for Roseanne and said, like, I know for a fact that she's not racist, and, to kind of clue you in a little bit on like the context of that tweet. And even then, though, like, Roseanne at first was like, thank you. But then later on in an interview said, well, he waited too long. So it's like,
yeah.
it's like whether you defend her or you don't defend her, she was kind of upset.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to get too in the weeds with it because it's like I kind of feel like it doesn't have much bearing on what the show is doing.
You could do a whole 2-hour episode probably on that alone.
Right.
So I think it's probably just a good spot to just...
Yeah, I didn't want to get into detail. I just wanted it explained why she's just not there. Like,
yeah, it's a weird situation, but it gets to this point now.
I will say, though, an interesting tonal shift is in Roseanne, the original series. Roseanne has an episode where she has to get breast reduction surgery. And the whole episode is like her freaking out about getting surgery. And the way they handle that is she has a dream sequence where they become much bigger and her doctor is Doogie Howser. And the way they handle it here is she's fucking dead. Like that is just such a different tonal shift between the two versions of the show.
And to flashback and to get into before we move forward, I guess, again, with the like 10th season reboot, that first episode, there's a scene where like Dan walks in and because of their restrictions on their prescription insurance and stuff are sharing pills. And he's like, oh, Candyman's here. And he like dumps all these pills on the table and they're dividing and sharing pills. And she's gets pain pills. And it's not like a concern yet, so like where, at first you can see like, she like this stuff, she's, already on pain pills and doing stuff. But I guess as that season developed, we find out that it was more problematic that she took them.
They're pretty lucky they set up that subplot.
I was just about to say the same thing. They're so lucky that by chance they kind of had this out with her. I always felt when it first happened, just not knowing the future and like, with time heal wounds, maybe you put her in a rehab facility for this season. And then if it doesn't get better, you can eventually kill her off. Something she relapsed.
Done. Yeah.
They could have, because it just buys you time. Because I just felt like the way it happened was so urgent. It happened so quickly,
They should have put her in a rehab facility, and then if they were like, we can't do this, they should have just done the Simpsons Poochie thing and be like, Roseanne died on the way to her home planet. Just been like, never mentioned it ever again.
It just gives you a little bit of time to kind of figure out what you want long term before, like, because I feel like killing people is so. Although in the Roseanne universe, not necessarily. Because
you can come back.
I wonder if that was discussed and it was like, nah, she would never go for that.
Yeah.
Being away a whole season.
So yeah, to get into the actual episode, where it starts, we see a black screen. It says the Connors in that kind of classic Roseanne font, which is kind of just that classic stencil font that I think Joe probably has 50 t-shirts with things written in that font. We're getting that kind of familiar Roseanne score. We see the exterior of the house, and then we cut inside, and the family's all in the kitchen, and they're talking about, what is this? Is this casserole or potato salad? Like, it doesn't matter. It's all mayonnaise stuff. We got Mark, who's the grandson, saying, it's been 3 weeks since Granny Rose's funeral. Why are people still giving us casserole? And that's giving us this context where, oh shit, Roseanne died in between seasons. So now we know that this addiction that she was dealing with in season 10 of Roseanne, as far as season 1 of the Connors goes, turned into a fatal situation.
So I didn't watch the reboot of Roseanne. So I kind of had a context of like, I know she wasn't on the Connors, obviously, but I didn't know how or anything about the 10th season. So I was like, oh, okay. And that's when everything hit me. So you guys answered a lot of my questions with the previous season.
I guess if you really wanted, right, let's pretend Roseanne season 10 never happened and they just created the show without her anyways. You could start it this way, but the episode would have to be way less dark. I feel like the darkness of this whole episode means you had to have already been invested in that last season of Roseanne.
I wonder what they would have done without them. Like, it's been 3 months since Grandma Rose got murdered by that serial killer. Like, what would they have done?
Car accident. I mean, there's other tragic ways to die.
True. Or they would have just did the heart attack in her sleep or, something like that.
Yeah.
But
well, that's what they first initially allude to.
Yes. And like Bergen said, they were so lucky that this was just how they wrote the last season anyways. They had kind of this... I
wonder what the original plan was.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it was to tell an overarching story, like a commentary, sort of, because that's kind of... We'll find out that's sort of what happens.
It sort of tells a couple different commentaries in this episode, too, though.
I mean, in this scene here, it's just like them going over the food and like, listen, we've all been there. We've all had loss in our family. And it's true. Like, people just send food. And the part of it is they talk about in the episode, it's just one less thing you have to worry about. You know what I mean? You're dealing with so much shit, so you don't have to worry about dinner. And you end up with all this fucking dead relative food that's in your house for an eternity.
Yeah. You get so much cutlets.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
What do they call it on The Sopranos? The ZD Brigade?
Yeah, not to make light of the situation, but it's like, because they make jokes about how, you know, hey, we actually got to finish this stuff and give people their pans back. You know, there's people dying and they're getting their, you know, sympathy, you know, food and Tupperware, and nobody actually I don't know. I mean, probably once upon a time, but now you don't hey, I'm sorry for your loss. I made you this lasagna. Here you go.
Yeah, it's all catered food.
Yeah, you find a catering place and you send a tray over. Yeah.
But remember, they're in a poor neighborhood. And they're poor.
That's true.
Yeah.
That said, too, though, if I did that, I wouldn't expect the dish back.
I don't know. My Pyrex.
Well, you buy those throwaway tins.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
yeah, you
true.
could do that. But even if I only had a nice Pyrex or a pie pan or whatever, I would have been like, this is a loss. I'm taking it as a loss. I'm not going to knock on your door later and be like, remember your dead husband lasagna?
And also, how do you keep track of all that Tupperware too? How do you know who and where it came from?
How do you ask for that back? How could you possibly ask for that back in a way?
And Ferg's right. Yeah, you don't give it in one of those. You just go and you get something that you're okay with parting with.
I always send dessert.
Yeah, every time we do some sort of potluck and everybody will spend time cooking and bringing stuff, Ferg will just show up with Stop and Shop cookies
and Doritos.
And Doritos, yeah.
Hey, everybody! Nobody thinks of dessert.
Hey man, I brought full cakes.
So, I mean, how do you guys feel about just this as a way to intro? Not just a new show, I guess, but just a season or in general. It's it's so heavy right from the start.
Yeah.
But true to Roseanne though, this is very real feeling. This is accurate emotion, and that's what that show kind of prided itself on.
Honest
and
to God,
seeing,
find me a show that does it better. I think we talked about this on Roseanne.
There isn't.
It just doesn't. I always think about the scene in Roseanne where Dan and Roseanne get into a fight about. I forget exactly what it was, and Dan just launches the coffee table across across the living room, and you just remember your jaw dropping watching it because it's you feel like you're in the room with a real family and you're watching the dad fucking throw the coffee table across.
At least our real families. I can't speak.
Yeah,
for
right. Yeah,
you guys listening, but
if I remember correctly, they get into a pretty good fight in the pilot episode we did too.
There
I think
was.
they do. Yeah.
He threw a can or something. It was I forget what was going on. It was something going on in something with the pantry.
What's interesting about it though is that the Roseanne was the one that cut the tension the best. She was the one who weaved in and out with the jokes during those serious things, and you don't have that anymore, and it's noticeable.
You got Darlene doing it now.
She's
they
trying
do a good
to
job
do
with
it.
the levity here.
It's not the same. I'm with you, but she kind of takes over that role. And
She does,
was always
for sure.
snarky, but now she's in the
Even
full
Jackie
front.
a little bit too.
Jackie takes.
We'll
a
get
lot
into
of
Jackie. I have a lot of
comedians.
issues with modern Jackie.
Really? Because I don't. I love unhinged modern Jackie.
She's great.
Yeah. Jay, I will say this went from dark to darker.
Oh yeah.
This went from
This is
oh,
just
you're
straight
in
up.
the deep
We're going to
sea.
talk about it, but this becomes a tearjerker by the last few minutes. For sure.
There was a point in my notes where I had to stop watching the show and
The little tear marks on your nose.
Yeah, exactly.
And we have the whole family here. I mean, again, this is the entire cast. I mean, this is the family. I mean, even
Can't believe the
Roseanne's
mother's
mother.
alive. I can't believe that.
Wild. In her 90s.
Yeah, and she's still mean as fuck to Jackie. I mean, you're getting everything back here. I mean, you are seeing this is the same without Roseanne. This is the same show, essentially. And we meet a little bit Mark walks in with his wife Gina, who is away in the military. She's like, "Hey, sorry, I missed the funeral. The airport in Afghanistan was under attack for a while. Still faster than O'Hare." And that was the one time I was like, that joke sucked.
That's the fucking terrible joke. Yeah, that's a real bad joke.
But they give you 5 days vacation pay.
That's
for
what
bereavement.
That's what everyone gets, though.
I thought you get 3.
Depends on depends on the relation and the company you work for. But usually, a parent or something like that, you get 5. It depends on your company. 5 or 3 usually, depending on the your situation.
I would say the main issue here, though, is 5 or 3 is usually good, but when your travel days back
To
and
and from
forth are
Afghanistan,
Yeah, 2
you
days
basically get
each,
like
yeah.
a day and a half.
Yeah, you should get like 5 days once you're on ground. And I don't know what the real policy is, but I'm sure that's probably about accurate.
To be fair, O'Hare does suck.
O'Hare does suck. That's actually true. Last time I had to go to Chicago, we just flew in and out of Milwaukee, which is way easier.
Well, what's the other Chicago? There's O'Hare and Midway.
That sounds right.
I just always go to the other one. It's like a longer drive depending on where you are.
They're both far. I mean,
But yeah, fuck O'Hare. It's not worth it.
How often are you guys there that you have multiple experiences in this hotel?
I've probably been to Chicago like 10 times, to be honest with you.
I've been probably 4 or 5 now.
Damn.
I've been 0.
Only time I've been there, we drove.
Chicago is fantastic. And I don't usually like other cities. Like I'm a Boston boy and I love it here. And I go to other cities and I judge them and I don't like a lot of them. But I love Chicago. I think it's great.
Shout out Chicago. Darlene walks into the living room and you see like Dan stretching like over the couch and she's getting on him for that whole like, hey dad, you have to start sleeping in your bed again. And he's like, no, it's like, I dozed off watching TV. And that's when you have Crystal, who is like a mainstay, like one of Roseanne's best friends on the whole run of Roseanne, who's at the house. And she's like,
I think the greatest character in all of Roseanne is Crystal.
really?
Yeah, she's my favorite.
Really? It's an interesting take.
She married Dan's dad in the original show.
Yeah,
didn't she?
yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After her first husband died, falling into the pillar of the bridge that he was pouring the cement for.
She's such a basket case, yeah.
Yeah, she read an article how it's common for a lot of people to not want to sleep in a bed after someone's died in it. And he's like, oh, fascinating.
I don't know. I laughed out loud at this because it really was like a no shit. Like, of course, you don't really have to be very deductive.
There's so many times where I can't tell if Dan is acting or if he's bored. And it's a really good mix, and I don't mean it in a bad way.
That's just kind of him, yeah.
Man, it's as far as like, and again, it's like there's a weird dynamic for this episode, but like watching the season 10 first episode and then this one, like he feels more like Dan in that show, but this is also him like a few days away from like losing his wife and grieving. So he's like not fully himself. And I think it's just good acting here where he's just kind of a little like empty, you know, like I'm getting a lot of that. Yeah.
We already have this super dark show, so I don't want to get fully into it, but I don't think I could sleep in the same bed either. I'd have to buy a new one.
That's tough. I know if I don't want to get into like the weeds of all of it, but yeah, it's a very common thing. I didn't read it in an article. I just, know people.
It's just common sense.
They couldn't even be in the same room anymore.
It's like you even deal with that stuff like post breakup. It's like weird to sleep in the bed for the first time alone. It's like, imagine like losing someone like in that situation. That's like gotta be way, 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 way worse. Here was kind of interesting too. We get the conversation because Gina walks in with Mary, who's, her and DJ's daughter. She's saying how Aunt Darlene said that Granny Rose might come back as a bird or a butterfly. And you get Gina like putting the fucking, the axe on that immediately because she's like hardcore like Christian. She's like, oh, well, maybe Aunt Darlene should put away her yoga pants and pick up a Bible. And I like that they're joking about it, but like, yeah, like this show, I guess true to Roseanne fashion, they don't want to steer away from talking about uncomfortable topics.
Yeah. It's too bad she's in Afghanistan because she's a great character and I think she'd play a good foil to Darlene, like for the remainder of the show.
As time kind of went on, I think they definitely got away from using DJ and they liked interjecting her when they could.
Act.
Oh God, he's awful. He's so bad.
I'm sorry if you're listening, DJ actor. Like,
you know what? I think he even knows.
I think he knows too. He hasn't really been like a mainstay in the acting world post the show.
He never did anything else really.
They give him like
he's in the background on this even.
From the reboot into this, they basically like if he gets more than 2 lines in an episode, it's a lot.
Good for him though. Make that money,
right?
Do you think it's if you're Gina? Do you think you just let your daughter believe that grandma might come back as a butterfly, or do you just go, no, that shit's fake. We believe in Jesus. And
I can do that.
You let her believe.
Depends your level of religion, I guess.
And I guess like heaven's not a bad alternate, right? So like, that should be comforting too. Yeah.
Or like if you think of like heaven could be anything you want it to be religion wise, right? Like it's a happy place with all your old family, your old pets, and there's chicken parm every day. Like, or you're a fucking butterfly, I'd be like, chicken parm, please, thank you.
You don't want to be a butterfly, man.
It's no fun.
Trust me, I know some butterflies.
Butterflies only live like 2 days. Fact.
Well, that's okay though, because then you come back as something else. Unless you were a shitty butterfly, in which case you're stuck as butterflies for eternity, I think. I think that's how it worked. I'm a religious
That's probably
scholar.
a good situation then. If you end up a butterfly, you're like, how can I fuck this up? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, notoriously, flapping their wings causes a lot of change, so I'd be careful.
right around here is when Jackie peeks in from outside and she calls Dan in, like, hey, can you meet me out here for a second? And when Dan goes outside, then Jackie goes, I just got a call from my friend in the coroner's office. The autopsy found that it wasn't a heart attack. Roseanne OD'd on opioids. And he's like, whoa, that's not possible. And this is like, again, like, oh man, John Goodman's such a good actor. Like this whole scene, I thought he crushes it.
Yeah.
Oh,
he
yeah,
kills
yeah.
it. Yeah.
He's like, we knew she had a problem. She was only on pain pills for 2 days after the surgery, and then it was just ibuprofen. And like, as they're talking, the kids walk out, or at least the two daughters. And, you know, through hearing them talk, like, Darlene's like, wait, mom overdosed? And he's like, no. He's like, I got her knees fixed. I flushed all her pills. Becky shows, oh, I just found these in mom's closet. And like, just simple acting, just the way he like, you know, is like squinting down and is talking different because like he's doing a talk and reading the label. Like, just like those little acting tidbits, like really like, well done, John
he's
Goodman.
world class. He's just
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's so fucking good. Yeah, and always has been.
So we find out that these pills that she was taking aren't even prescribed to her. It's someone in town, Marcy Bellinger. And he like walks back in with the pills, and you get Becky with the line, damn, that's the only thing in mom's closet that I wanted. And like,
I laughed pretty hard at that.
It was funny, but it was also like a strange pick for a joke, I guess. Right?
no, I thought it was like the perfect, because it like,
That's very Roseanne.
Yeah.
it was like it was like a real enough comment where she wasn't going for like a yuck joke. You know what I mean? It was like she delivered it like she meant it, but it was funny enough to like cut the tension a little bit.
Side note, wasn't that other girl on the old Roseanne, Marcy, the girl with the gap tooth with Tom Arnold?
Oh no, you're thinking of Sandra Bernhard. She was
I thought her name was Marcy too.
It's
for
not
some
Marcy.
reason.
It'll come to me.
She was in like a bunch.
But yeah, this is where it turned real dark.
Oh, she was Nancy.
Nancy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, John Goodman.
I will say, Marcy though, like I don't know, I wouldn't do this, but if I was going to give somebody my prescription pills, I would be like, here is a baggie of them. I'm not going to give you evidence of these with my name and
Right, yeah.
phone number on them.
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna talk more about that specific prescription later, but I guess you never know, right? Like this isn't as a drug deal, you know. It was more like helping a neighbor, you know. And we'll talk about it when we get to it. Next scene, we have Becky and Darlene, and they're in the kitchen, like going over the bills, and just again, it's all just the shit you have to do when you lose a family member. They're going over all the expenses, and you know they're trying to joke around a little bit to cut the tension, and just figuring out life. And I think like there's this point as they're going through all this, it's just getting a little heavy for Becky. And she's like, I gotta head back to work. Like, I have a split shift I have to finish. And Darlene's like, I need you to help me with this. Like, there's just too much. And she's like, well, you're the one who takes care of this stuff. She's like, well, can we do some more stuff Friday? She's like, I have a date Friday. She's like, all right, well, what about Saturday morning? She's like, I just told you I have a date on Friday. You know, that's the, haha, Becky's trying to fuck. And I think like these jokes are working. Like for a heavy episode, I think a lot of the jokes are landing, but it's such a tough balance and it's still leaning heavy most scenes. Because Darlene's asking, like, can't you just stay vertical for one more day? Yeah, Becky's saying, like, this is just a lot for me. Like, you know, you're the obvious choice to take over for mom. You already live here and you're a scary little tyrant. I didn't like Darlene's response. You're just going to compliment me and walk out? Like, I thought that was a little too corny.
That's very Darlene,
That's
though.
very Darlene and very Roseanne.
It's also
Yeah,
very
I feel like it's like the
Roseanne.
character.
Yeah, and it just shows you like, you know, A, for effort, but like just the shortcomings. It's like you can't recreate Roseanne. You should have maybe found another, you know, just like bring her up in her own way. Don't try to mimic Roseanne so much.
Well, there's also that, like, you're your mother's daughter, you know, so some of that's
No,
gonna
I know,
shine.
I know, but it didn't I don't know. Sometimes she doesn't hit, and I feel like it's really noted. Maybe it's just me.
So Becky's like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to get on my phone and I'm going to find someone to cover my shift. I'm going to do what's right. And she leaves the room and goes like, you're too trusting. You might want to work on that. And she just like leaves.
I laughed at that.
As she leaves, we have Harris, who's Darlene's daughter, walking in. And again, it's like, I feel like I'm not introducing characters properly, thinking about the last season of
but
Roseanne.
neither are they, so.
But like, Harris is Emma Kenney, who like you would probably know, she has like a long run in Shameless, back to back like big shows, 100+ episodes on each. So good for her.
Yeah, she's in Shameless. What's so weird watching this because in Shameless she's like
a lot younger, yeah,
baby, right? Like she comes out of Shameless into this being like, I'm hooking up with this biker guy, and you're like, no, you're a little girl. It's so fucking weird.
Yeah,
but like, yeah, imagine like being at the age she's at. And she already has like over 200 episodes over 2 shows. Like just that, what a credit. And I thought she was one of those, I'll say this, to go back and before like even going forward, as far as the new characters go, when it comes to Mark's wife and their kid and Darlene's kids, like I thought they did a really good job. And in the Connors, not to get ahead, but some of the characters that we introduced later on in the series, I thought they did a really good job of keeping this world feeling like the same world and characters that were believable within it.
I think she's the most believable as a member of that family if you were to go to the next generation. Like she fits in. Like I could see her around the table with them all playing poker. Like
Harris?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Harris for sure. Like she was like, they nailed it with her. She walks in after Becky leaves and she's talking about like, hey, you and I, Becky, need to make up. Like, what if she died and the last thing you ever did was fight? And Darren's like, oh, you know, kind of upset because like you and Granny Rose had been fighting a lot before she died. And she's like, kinda. And she's like, families fight, but it doesn't mean we all don't love each other. And plus, like all those letters that Granny Rose left each one of us before she passed, she's like, Granny Rose wrote everyone a letter? Oh my God, maybe not everybody. And I thought that was my favorite joke of the whole episode.
It was good, yeah.
It's like the most wholesome joke of the whole episode around dying.
I don't want to keep saying this, but that's very Darlene. Like,
yeah. The idea of like, can you imagine like losing and finding out that like that relative wrote everyone in your family a letter, like, but you?
There's no David in this episode.
Yeah.
Since they're getting everybody back that's alive, you'd think he'd have a quick cameo.
He does show up later, not this episode, but he should be at the funeral episode. I don't know. Yeah, maybe if they did an episode at the funeral, he'd be there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember now. Was his big story arc, did that happen in the Connors or in that season of Roseanne?
I can't remember anymore now. Yeah, they just kind of muddle together. Because
he comes back and reprises the role, and I thought they did like kind of a good way of like bringing him in but closing it out. Like just
I thought that was the first reboot.
It could have been. I'm a little shaky on it right now.
I think it was too, but again, I can't remember.
And that's just another situation too, where like his career has taken off so much over since Roseanne.
I do appreciate though that he came back for a cameo. I know I bring it up all the time, but fuck you, Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen, for not even zooming into one episode.
For real, like Jesus.
And I think that's one area where this Roseanne, the Connors, or like just to have like such a deep cast coming back, like even the Crystals and
Chuck, his friend Chuck.
Yeah, Chuck and all these people, like they did such a great job of like just remembering the whole world, and they continue on with that. A lot of these characters kind of pop their faces in here and again. So here we hear noise in the living room, and it cuts to Jackie, and she's like wet vacuuming the couch. And Darren's like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, Roseanne always wanted to do this. And I just kind of figured with all the company we have and like it's kind of fulfilling her dream. And Darren's like, well, when can I sit down? I just kind of wanted to veg out, watch TV for a bit. She's like, it just takes like 3 to 5 days.
I'd like to think she did that to make Dan sleep in the bed, but I that's not why.
Yeah, I don't think it was clever enough for that.
So where did Dan sleep for the next 3 to 5 days?
An armchair.
On that chair.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Fuck that, yeah.
I will probably be sleeping on the couch tonight, and I'm not looking forward to it.
Oh, did you do something wrong?
Germs.
Yeah, I brought germs into the house when I didn't leave for the past 3 days.
I was going to say, like, what did someone mail you germs?
Actually, that's entirely possible. Somebody sneezes into a package. Is that Do they live that long? I don't know.
How long does it live? I don't know.
No idea.
I'd say it would depend on whatever the strain was.
Gotcha.
That box of talcum powder Ferg sent me.
Ferg sent you a fart, but
There's a little poo in it.
it was contaminated.
I was worried that it's going to send him a bunch of gluten, but
In powder form somehow. You know what? That I will say, one time I didn't realize how bad it was going to be. I was like waiting for friends to finish getting pizza in like the tiniest pizza shop in Alston, and the entire room was just flour floating in the air. And I was like, well, just being around it's not going to be like an issue or whatever. And it was like a fucking countdown. It was like 3 hours later. I was like the most stomach sick I've ever been just from. And at that point, you get so mad because you're like, well, if I had known, I would have just eaten a piece of delicious pizza.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't have gotten
Yeah.
sick from inhaling air flour for 2 hours, you know?
Was it that it felt exactly the same had you just ate bad food or food?
Yeah, it
that's
was like
not
the exact
good food?
same reaction.
Oof.
Should have just went for the chicken parm.
You can eat chicken parm without gluten.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Yeah, breadcrumbs. You need
Yeah,
breadcrumbs.
you just need breadcrumb with a different flour. Yeah, that's one of the easier things to figure out.
Not the same.
Italian gluten-free breadcrumbs, there's 2 companies that make them really good that you'd never know the difference.
You'd know.
that's something like vegans say. Like, you can't tell it's not meat. Yeah, you can.
No, I'll say that. No, that usually they're lying. Some of the gluten-free, like I've had gluten-free breads that aren't that bad.
Nah,
Especially when you're talking about breadcrumb where it's already like dry and
that's-
flaky at that point. Like, it
Breadcrumbs are
doesn't
very
matter.
simple. Like,
Right, it's just seasoning at that point and texture.
Mm.
You come over one day, Gordon, I'll make you my wife will make you a homemade chicken parm with breadcrumbs, and I bet you'll enjoy it.
Of course I will.
And then I'll show you the boy hole.
Okay, I was going to say, is that going to come with a chore?
It's dinner and a movie.
I
dinner
hope
and a
it
show.
never happens. I want it to never happen so bad. You don't
please
even
make
understand.
it eat him in the yard, eat it in the yard, and don't let him in the boil.
Just, I wish I could, like, you know, people who think that some of the stuff we talk is like a bit for the show. It's like we are the same on and off air.
Oh, yeah.
When I last went to Joe's, we took a picture from his boy hole, which I think we posted.
Yeah, you did.
When we sent it to like our group chat, Gordo's legit anger.
And for our new Connors listeners, the boy hole is Joe's man cave.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Do not
Yeah.
like that term.
You confused a lot of new people.
That's true. I shouldn't assume that everyone's been listening to us for 198 episodes. That's crazy. But yes. So out of context, I'm sorry. Joe's boy hole is not his butthole.
I just don't like the term man cave. I find it to be a little gauche.
I don't like the term gauche, you bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, what the hell does that mean?
It means Gordo.
Fat?
Yes. It means La Casita Bonita is what it means.
It's funny, whenever you make like a clip and I share it on X, I don't put like our names, but I do put hashtag Gordo if it's one of his, hoping it'll catch one of the algorithms for like fat people.
It's like next to Dr. Phil being like, you're fat because you want to be fat. Just like that's just Gordo saying something fucking stupid.
Come on, Elon, make that happen.
Next scene, we're at La Casita Bonita, which is the restaurant where Becky works. And we see Dan sitting at the bar with his buddy Chuck, again, talking about characters who they've like kept in this world. Dan's sitting there and Chewy from Bruise Brothers hands him a beer.
It's been so long.
Stupid ass show.
I wasn't on that episode, but I had seen that show and liked it and mentioned it before. So I was just like, yeah, that was a green light. I liked it. I didn't get to rewatch it, so I don't remember that dude being in it.
He's like, hey, sorry for your loss. It's on the house. He's like, oh, I appreciate it. And then Chuck's like, does that extend to close friends? He's like, no.
That's a great line, though.
Is this before or after Bruise Brothers? Is he like a tight cast guy? It's like, I'm always going to be around beer.
2018. This is before.
Is this before?
Before, because Bruise Brothers came out during the pandemic.
Oh, that's right.
You're right. Yeah, I remember watching. That's when I watched it.
And you know what? I gotta say, kind of didn't like Dan here. He's like, this is domestic. My loss is deeper than that. I think it goes all the way to Germany. And the guy's like, oh, you got it. It's like, did you just return an opened beer?
That's the only reason I don't like it. He should have given Chuck the American beer.
Yeah, it's like, the guy just like, hey, man, sorry you're going through shit. Here's a beer. And he's like, I don't want this beer. Like, made him throw away a perfectly good beer.
I'd rather have a margarita.
On the house, like, hey, sorry for your loss. I wouldn't be like, I don't drink this. Like, that's not the moment for that.
I would.
Well, that's a real dick move. You shouldn't do that.
I would trade it in for a Heineken.
Dan just shot his shot. Like he was making a joke, and if it didn't work, he would have drank the other beer.
Sure.
But hey,
But it's you're putting the bartender in an uncomfortable spot. Gordon, this is like the beginning of the episode. If someone like sent you a casserole and you don't like it, you don't go like, I don't really like casserole. Would you mind going home and making me something different?
No, I wouldn't do that, but
It's the same thing.
Dan's inflection too was almost joking as well. It wasn't like
not
he was
almost.
like,
He is joking. He smiles and laughs.
He's joking, but Dan's also like twice the size of Chewie. I don't know Chewie's name in this episode. Bartender.
it is kind of a joke, but he gives it to him. So props for him.
Right after that, we see Becky and Darlene walk in, and Darlene's holding this sign. It's like, Dad, what's this? Darlene gave Becky a ride to work.
And real quick, I just want to say before we get into this, please go to S1E1pod.com to go to our merch store and buy our new Thank You, Marcy Bellinger, for the pills that killed my lovely wife, Roseanne t-shirt.
You should make that.
That's a great shirt. We
That
really
is
should
a good
make that
idea.
one.
I will consider that one.
You
I
have to
will
do it.
Oh my
consider
God.
that.
Yeah.
Fuck.
It's such weird inside baseball. I love that it's his loving wife, Roseanne, too. Really puts like the extra dagger in, you know?
So if anyone's curious what that sign says, what Joe just said. So basically, Dan's just driving around with a sign taped to his truck, letting the entire town know that this girl gave Roseanne the pills that killed her.
Conspiracy theory style, like writing handwritten signs taped on his truck. Like you see those people that say like birds aren't real on their truck.
And she's like, this looks like a lawsuit. He's like, put it back. He's like, he wants the world to see it. And he's being a little aggressive here.
Yeah, but rightfully so.
Yeah, I'm on his side on this one.
I could see Darlene's concern that because you could right? It's like a defamation lawsuit.
Yeah, and then you could sue her for giving your wife the pills and killing her.
Yeah, if my wife,
Want
not
to play that game?
like that happened to her, I'd be doing that shit too.
Yeah, but then if you were Marcy, I'd be like, nope, she stole those pills from me. I didn't give them to her.
Yeah, but then you find out that she's part of a pill ring, and it's pretty hard to have deniability at that point.
Darlene eventually hands him the sign back because he said it was either that or drive the truck through her house. When she hands him the sign back, he leaves, and then Chuck has to leave with him. He's like, the truck through the house thing, that was an expression, right?
Dan turns out and goes, no. Speeds up.
And then the episode takes a dark, dark turn.
Not yet. You've said this almost every scene, but it's still not yet.
I mean, to be fair, though, every scene is sort of a dark turn in this episode.
But this is like the second time going, and this is where it gets real dark, and it's not that part yet.
The show was born in darkness. There's no dark turn.
I was responding to Ferg's message.
So now we get to the next scene. Dan's in the kitchen, and Mark walks in with these two other boys. He's going, Grandpa, this is Enrique and Joey. He's like, hello, men.
No, fuck Joey. Glass stealing bitch.
I was going to say, my two favorite jokes of the entire episode come back to back here.
Dan's like, I'll let you guys play. I got stuff to do in the garage. He's like, oh, you don't have to go. They're just here to grab a quick drink and they're leaving. I'm doing my homework. Which is like the logistics of that. Imagine walking all the way to a friend's house just to get a quick drink and then leave. He's like, oh, I got to do homework. I can't hang out. But if you guys want to walk to my house, I'll give you a drink.
I will say this, though. We find out later on they are all kind of romantically linked, and you do that for someone you're into.
Yeah.
Sure. So they're
That's
both
true, yeah.
you think they're competing for him almost?
I don't know, because you don't know enough about the characters. We know the kid is gay. We don't know if those two boys are.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, they both want to sit next to him on the bus. We find out, as things go on, but Mark, we know, is he's openly gay. Well, he openly he has a conversation soon with Dan where he's telling him he likes boys and stuff. But these kids aren't doing anything in the little bit we see them to give you any inkling that either of them are interested in him at all.
Yeah, I thought they were just friends.
And I think maybe something would have helped that scene a little bit, because it's just, it's is Mark even aware that they're just maybe they are just friends and they don't and he's dreaming up this means all this stuff, and it ends up being both these kids aren't even into him like that.
I'm conflicted with this subplot because it doesn't need to be in this episode specifically, but I also like it because you get to see Dan be a good grandfather, and I'm just
Right.
oh, I love that. I'm just
I did like this for Dan, especially the way it evolved, because from the start to where it evolves, like you see a lot of growth and like quick time with him.
Yeah.
So,
He's so loving.
yeah.
Love you, Dan.
When the two kids are there though, like what little we get from them is like Enrique is like, "Hey, I'm sorry to hear about your wife, Mr. Connor." And then Joey's like, "Hey, people die. What are you gonna do?" And you go, "Whoa, what the fuck?"
Little
Yeah.
shithead.
He's like a little like dark kid in a Punisher shirt.
Dan's reaction, seen a little too much in Nam.
Yeah.
Joey.
That's such a great fucking retort.
It really is.
But then after that, when Joey walks out with the cup, Dan's reaction and the way he says, "No, that's our cup." He's so actually depressed and puts his head down. This is so fucking great.
They're drinking like orange juice from like a pitcher too. Or I assume Tang maybe.
Purple stuff, OJ, Sunny D.
I went looking for these pictures online too, because it's like a giant ceramic,
It's so cool.
ceramic like rooster or hen. And you can find them varying from like $40 to like $200, depending on who they're made by.
That is also on Home Improvement.
That pitcher.
Yeah, they definitely have that too.
And Roseanne, if you remember, for like the last few seasons, was always wearing that shirt that had like the 3 roosters on it.
I only brought it up because I thought it was strange. It's like they came to the house for a drink. You assume you'd hand them bottles of water or something like that. And they just had full glasses and left with them.
I love orange juice, but how often do you want orange juice when you're super thirsty? You're like, make my spit thicker and syrupier and
Well, that's
give me
why
heartburn.
I changed it halfway to it being Tang, because I don't know.
If we were that age and we were all walking to Ferg's house, it would have been Diet Pepsis.
Back then, no, it would have been regular Pepsi.
Yeah, back then it was the blue cans.
I wasn't that healthy as I am right now, you know? Back then.
Yeah, you don't work out like Joe does.
Look how good it's doing me right now. I don't know if that's the best.
It's funny. It's like the weird things that like flag you as a kid, because like I grew up in a Coca-Cola household, and I just always remember like
Oh, you grew up in a good household.
Pepsi's like to this day, like I can never, I don't drink soda anymore at all. But I think like in a pinch, if I had like a Coke, there'd be like some sort of a nostalgic, like, oh wow, I haven't had a Coke in a long time.
I like them both with different things.
But yeah, if you gave me a Pepsi, I'd be like a child. If I was like, my throat was dry and I couldn't stop coughing, I would probably hold my nose as I took a few sips of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
you're
so
the only
gross.
one that drinks Moxie.
Yeah, well, Moxie's the best.
What if I give you a Pepsi and pour some motor oil in it? Will you drink it then?
Yeah, it'll taste like Moxie.
I think that's my favorite description of what Moxie tastes like. Pepsi with motor oil. It's so right.
And black licorice for some reason.
Oh,
so
no,
gross.
that's a man soda right there. And thank you to the Coca-Cola company for buying it to preserve it and keep it around forever.
Well, that strikes 2 and 3 right there. Team Pepsi.
That is a man soda. So depressing.
I don't know how to.
At least
Might be
his
Goro's
joke
best
pertained
joke
to what
ever.
we were talking about. If nothing else, he got it right.
It's like I'm
not mad at it.
amazed. I mean, like I didn't find the joke funny, but I'm like proud of him for like getting a
too.
joke that was like timely and made sense.
Yay.
Yeah.
Growth.
That was such a real yay.
Goro just signs off. Poof.
Leave on a high note.
Never to be seen again.
My planet needs me.
Normally it would be, you don't think about Pepsi? It really makes you fart.
Goro just leaves. It's the Breakfast Club ending. You just see him one fist in the air, freeze frame.
Bum, bum.
So, anyways, the two kids leave. Joey with their cup in hand. Dan's about to leave and head into the garage and let Mark do his homework. And Mark's like, "Hey, before we leave, can I ask you something first?" He's like, "Sure, if it's quick." Like, well, Granny Rose and I were talking about this field trip that I'm going on Friday, and we never got to finish the conversation. There's these two kids that want to sit next to me with them on the bus, and she was going to help me figure out which to pick because whoever I sit next to, it kind of means I like them. And he just goes, "This doesn't sound quick." And then asks, like, "Are any of them boys?" And he goes, "Yeah, Enrique and Joey." So it's the two kids who are just there. And at first he goes, "Would you like to talk about death some more?"
You can tell he does a really good job of like being uncomfortable about the topic.
So at first he's definitely uncomfortable by it. And he's telling him, like, I got to be honest with you, like, there's a reason that your mom and Aunt Becky would go to grandma for this kind of stuff. And he's saying it's a measure of my deep affection for you that I haven't already ran out of the room. And then this was like, I think this moment is where it flipped, right? And he realized like the importance of like being a good grandpa, because Mark says, Grandpa Dan, did you ever like a boy? He's like, no. He's like, does it bother you that I do? And he just goes, no. It's like you realize, like
full stop
right there. And then he was like, I've kind of been waiting for you to tell me about it, because Mark wasn't exactly he was pretty effeminate. So actually, to be completely transparent, like when the show first started, and like when they did Roseanne, like the character was intended to be more like gender fluid.
Yeah, he wore dresses, right?
Yeah, and as it progressed, they kind of just made him more of like just kind of just a straight, like more, I don't know what the word would be, not
Queer,
but no, he's just a gay dude, but he's not like, he doesn't wear women's clothing or anything like that. He's less gender fluid. He's just more like kind of male. He's just a male that happens to be gay.
They dropped the subtext and just hit you on the head.
But you know what it is too? It's like, to be fair with that character and whatever, and like, hey, different paths for everybody. Like there are people who are our age who are men who wear dresses. Like that's not the point.
Yeah.
But like when you're a kid, like when we were kids, we joke about the things we wore as kids. You experiment with things more and you kind of figure out what your style is.
Yeah.
And like for a kid like him who was like a young gay boy, like he was probably like, am I like, and he's a little more effeminate. He's like, maybe I belong more in dresses. And then maybe he just realized with time as the character grew older, like that's not really what I'm most comfortable in. And he's maybe just evolved out of that. But anyways, before I say anything that's going to get me in any kind of real trouble.
Yeah, I was going to say, you came out of that well, so just move on.
Yeah, it's like, so let's stop right there and move forward before I Roseanne myself off this show. Yeah, I think that this was like the point where Dan talking to Mark here and saying like, I've been waiting for you to tell me about it. And just the way he said no when, so quickly when it was asked if he is bothered by the fact that his grandson likes boys. Like, I think that really saved his character, because in the beginning he was coming off a little like, not homophobic, but kind of in a way, to be honest. Like he was like very uncomfortable by the situation. And I think just when he like really put it in perspective here, it snapped out of him real fast.
Yeah, I had homophobia ?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get homophobia from him, because he says this is why your mother and Aunt Becky go to Roseanne for this kind of stuff. They're women. It's just relationship stuff. He's uncomfortable talking relationships.
Yeah, I don't think it. Yeah.
I don't know.
I didn't pick this up as homophobia at all. I just picked it up as he's uncomfortable talking about relationship stuff as a whole.
Not even uncomfortable per se, but just unknowledgeable.
Yeah, like not good at it.
Yeah, and maybe it's perceived that way, at least for me and Gordo, because the first time he's being asked to do relationship advice in place of Roseanne, it just so happens that the context of these relationships are gay. So maybe if it was Harris or or the I'm trying to remember the other granddaughters, Mary. If maybe if one of them went to him with advice, like maybe and you saw him just as uncomfortable, like maybe it would have not given that vibe.
Well, the way he just like, I don't know, the way he said like no, like you thought for a second there. I don't know. It could have went either or.
Yeah, like maybe in reality it was just him as a grandfather not wanting to think about romantic interest for his grandchildren. And, and not think about, so it could be that. Yeah. And it's just, the way it read because of the circumstances. Yeah. So now in the next scene, we see a bunch of the family in the living room and they're all watching a movie, but because the couch was recently wet vaxxed, no one could sit on it. So everyone's just around it. And you see DJ and his wife sitting in like tall chairs behind the couch.
I love the framing of this shot too, as they zoom in on the couch and they zoom out rather, and you see that everybody is around the couch. That was really well done.
Yeah.
It's crazy, through like 10 full seasons of this show, it's the first time you see the couch without that woven blanket on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The couch is so much it's so weird how like the couch and that blanket have become so iconic. And that was even like, to go back, like I said, I watched the final episode of the original run of Roseanne earlier today. And if you remember, like they hit the lottery and so they refurnished the whole house. Once we get to her telling you through narration that Dan really did die and that, all that stuff about winning the lottery was just her fantasizing. When she walks out into the living room for the final scene, it goes back to that couch again. Like it's the original furniture. It's not the way we've seen it that whole season.
It's like the most impactful. Like as it transitions, that's how you know.
And it's just like, yeah, it's so funny. You see that couch, like whenever they do like Roseanne reunions, they always have like that couch and blanket. Like it's so funny. It's the most generic, probably middle America. You would have seen it in a billion houses.
Well, I think that's why it's so.
And you see those together and you see that blanket and like that's Roseanne. That's the Connors. You know, it's like that could be in the Smithsonian, you know, at this point.
Yeah.
I think Archie's chair is, so maybe their couch original one is.
That would be such a cool, like, have like a living room like compiled of iconic things from other shows like that. What else would belong?
The TV from The Simpsons.
That's
a cartoon.
God. I was thinking more like there's that frame from Friends through the look.
That
you
would be
put
there.
something like that in there.
I know it's not the kitchen and not the living room, but I think like the one bunny in Uncle Jesse's room that he kept in a frame.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a good one.
That would be such a cool like little sitcom exhibit in a museum. That was just like walk from room to room, and it was just like a mixture of all these other things. Oh, I want that to exist.
You could go outside to the little fence where Wilson hangs out for.
We need to
home
pitch
improvement.
this. We need to figure out a way to make this happen.
I bet you it does exist. There's a lot of shit at Smithsonian.
Yeah, I mean, it'd take you like years to go through all of it.
Maybe they should do an S1E1 exhibit.
I think we don't necessarily have the same cultural relevance as Roseanne and All in the Family have.
It'll be the Sitcom Museum presented by S1E1.
And now we're sponsoring things. Now we're putting the money up for stuff.
Yeah, again, for us to sponsor it, we have to pay for it. So we're going to need a lot of t-shirts, guys.
So go and buy a t-shirt.
So don't forget to buy your "Thank You, Marcy Bellinger, for killing my lovely wife Roseanne" t-shirt.
I think we'd have to sell maybe 8.2 million Marcy Bellinger shirts, and then we could probably sponsor this. So if you want to see this become reality,
you charge 8.2 million and we sell one.
That's true.
Good point.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Darlene's going, I hope everyone's enjoying the movie. I'm having a blast sitting on this hard chair paying bills on a plastic tray stolen from the hometown buffet. R.I.P. hometown buffet.
That's a J place if I ever heard one. I remember.
Oh my God.
You guys always went there.
I think we've brought it up in the show before. And this is one of those places that when we were kids, like when my family would go to the hometown buffet, there used to be like, there was a line, you know, like it was like a long line just to get in. And you went in and it's just a self-serve buffet, except for the one guy who like cuts the roast beef for you. And I felt like this is like the fanciest place in the world to my fucking family. Listen, there's a reason shows like Roseanne and the Connors speaks to me, okay? But when she named dropped the hometown buffet, all the feels came back.
Do you think in this Smithsonian Mama's guitar would make it?
Oh,
Oof.
I mean, if we're thinking of like what would be in an S1E1 exhibit ever, though, like definitely Mama's guitar, Casper Jackson's hat.
It would be Bob's socks from Bob Hart Abishola.
Yeah.
I bet they're comfy.
We haven't gotten there yet, but eventually we're gonna have to cover Two Broke Girls, and it'll be that be one of their aprons or something.
Be Kat Dennings' bra, and the whole thing can be inside of it.
Zoe Deschanel's glasses, of course.
Yuck.
Can we just use Joe's?
Yeah,
hate
it's
you
the
so
same thing.
much.
Now DJ's going, at least I don't have a wet ass from sitting on the couch.
I love that they didn't tell him.
Yeah, I think like just the idea of him saying wet ass was supposed to be the focal point of the joke. And there's a whole thing where they all knew and just didn't tell him. And he looks at his wife and he's like, you could have told me. And she goes, yes, I could have.
I do like their relationship.
I needed more of it.
Yeah.
And then, well said, Gordo. This is definitely when the show starts taking a little bit of a dark turn. So
Yes.
Darlene's going to make some coffees. Her and Gina, who's TJ's wife, walk into the kitchen and you see Jackie in there. And she's holding the coffee maker. And she's like, all right, don't touch anything. I'm trying to figure out, like, there's like a system, right? Like, and everything, like, there's like a triangle vortex. So basically, everything's supposed to be like fluent motion for like efficiency, right? That's kind of like the basis idea of this.
Kitchen work triangle system. It's real. I looked into this and read about it for like half an hour.
Oh, really? This is like an actual thing?
This is a real thing. So it's basically a set of design rules to make your kitchen more efficient, and you keep the stove, the sink, and the refrigerator within a triangle so that you can do that. And there's like so many crazy rules about distance, and things have to be so far from if you have a kitchen island. Like it
makes sense, but Jackie's not good at anything.
So it makes sense to a degree, but also like that makes sense if you're building a kitchen from scratch too. Like
Yeah.
where most of us live, like your fridge is in the only place the fridge can be.
Yeah.
Unless
Yep.
you renovate and
100%,
change everything,
yeah.
you know?
My fridge is right next to my stove.
Do you guys honestly like this version of Jackie? The wacky
I really
Jackie?
do. I
I
love
kind of do, yeah.
I love Wacky
She-
Jackie.
In the original show, she never really had her act together, but she wasn't like, oh, I'm crazy. Like I just they started that on the reboot.
I think for what new comedies in like new sitcoms have, I think she is still a believable character within it because the idea of like the wacky aunt exists in real life. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people have that like really goofy aunt. So it's not a far stretch. She's not that, you know, like you say all the time, the too dumb to function, like not believable character.
No, I wouldn't put her there, but it's just she has this extreme flanderalization
Yes.
of her in these 2 seasons.
And you also see, though, this is also, you know, 20 years later. So you're seeing,
Yeah.
you know, a woman who went from being, you know, of a certain age to like, some people get a little goofier. Some people get grumpy and mean when they hit that age. So like, you do see personalities change a little bit at that stage of their life.
I guess you're right. I never really took time in account when I made my decision on how I felt about it. So that makes a lot more sense. It is 20 years later.
But Jackie was grounded by like having a kid and a house and a husband, right? Like you had all of that.
Yeah.
And like obviously it breaks out from there. But like if we're to believe that
was a cop,
Roseanne
yeah.
read and wrote the baby and wrote all that, then like she's just been going on like a rapidly more and more crazy descent this entire time. And then Roseanne leaves and it like totally spins her out, right?
And two, like, I think part of it was when you think back to the bringing back Roseanne, right? The season
Yeah.
before that, you have Roseanne who in real life has like her views and opinions have changed a little bit in life. She became a little bit more conservative. And I think they really wanted Jackie to be the counterpoint to like, to make both of those characters kind of like fill the extremes a little bit. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, in that season, she was a midwife, right? Or like something like that when Roseanne was still alive.
I don't remember.
trying to remember.
Or
I
like a
think
doula.
so, yeah. Yeah, I think a doula or a midwife, and she had like the
She like believed in crystals and shit.
yeah, and she was wearing the like
Well, the first episode, she has like the vagina knit hat on and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So they were like really, so I think like her extreme was to counter Roseanne's extreme. And then like now Roseanne's gone. But so they dialed down some of it on a like politically, they dialed it down, but then just kind of kept her a little bit more loosey, kind of like goofy comedy relief.
So I will say this is that it's 100% believable that she would be like this because she's also grieving for her sister.
But she
Well,
was
sure.
like that in the last season before she died. That's why I made sure I included it.
Well, without having seen that, I can also say that this also like complete sort of off the cliff kind of.
Well, here she's being very manic, which is, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's the grieving we're seeing.
I
So
agree with you on that. When her being manic in this one, moving everything around, not wanting to go home, that makes sense. But everything else,
I don't know. I think that her behavior throughout the whole episode just is her manic grieving for Roseanne.
yeah, I mean, here to go back, I mean, she's talking about, she's holding the coffee pot and through this whole triangle system, like the only place that it makes sense to put it is in the middle of the kitchen table. And then she's like, well, where are we going to plug it in? And now she's like, oh, that's not a problem. And she's going over like, we'll just drill a hole through the table and we'll put a pipe up and we'll run some electricity. And it's like, you know what, Aunt Jackie, like, thank you. Like, maybe you need to go home right now and just like relax a little bit. It's like, no, I'm here to help. Through all this, she opens up a drawer and it reveals, we get that like, oh, and there's more pills. And Darlene's, where did those come from? It's like, oh, I found these in an ice pack in the freezer. It's like, oh God, so mom's been hiding pills like all over. She's like, yeah, I knew you would be upset, so I was gonna throw them in the trash can. And then like, I don't even know where I put the trash can.
I do like that that's the reason she couldn't throw it away. Is she
Yeah.
forgot where she put the trash can.
And I'll just say, like, even through like romantic, like again, we've gone over it. We were saying it earlier with John Goodman. Laurie Metcalf, we've sung her praises on multiple shows that we've covered that she's in. She, like, I think is such an unsung hero in general in acting, and it's, you know, her contributions to a lot of shows, and the range you get from her, I think in this episode alone just shows so much about her.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Because you see her being like goofy to the point of like, all right, chill. And then like when the emotional sides come out, which we'll see in a little bit, it just, it's a lot. You get a lot from her. Here, we go back to the living room and someone's knocking at the door. Mark goes to get it. Like, can I help you? And then we hear, I'm Marcy Bellinger. Can I speak with Dan Connor, please? He's like, I got this. And he walks out, shuts the door. And like, just like, the rage, like everything that's holding him from being like physically violent, you know, telling her you've got a lot of nerve.
Then Doc Brown comes out. He's like, your kids, Marty. Something's going to be done about your kids.
Yeah, because wasn't she in Back to the Future 3?
Yep, she was Clara.
Yeah.
Clara Clayton. I feel like I say this in every episode, but she's got a great story arc in Justified.
And she's the mom and step brothers.
One of the funniest lines in the entire movie is just her giving up and going, what the fucking fuck? It makes me laugh every time.
I'm trying, like, how do you pronounce the last name properly? Is it Steenburgen?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a hard G. The good.
Well, that's why I'm not sure, and I didn't want to put her.
Bergen.
And I was
Maybe
desperately
Steenburgen.
hoping one of you were going to say her name and credit her, and I was like, Jesus, no one's saying her fucking name.
We should go to the authority, Seth Meyers.
As I say, I rewatched all of Curb in the past year, and she's a big part of like the first few seasons, and I thought they say Steenburgen, but I could be wrong.
Oh, Steenburgen. But she's also the mom in Elf. That's another good one.
It is Bergen.
It's Bergen?
Bergen.
Yeah.
Now, you checked the Seth Meyers clip, correct?
No, I just did Google pronunciation.
Well, that's not Seth Meyers.
Yeah, I want to hear somebody say it.
We have a week or so to find the clip if we have to. She's asking Dan, please take your sign off that truck. He's like, no. He's like, everyone's seen it already. You've made your point. They all hate me. I can't eat. I'm drinking myself to sleep. I have to live with this for the rest of my life. Isn't that enough for you? And he's like, my wife's gone. What do you think?
You can tell here she's clearly fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's explaining to him, like, nobody can afford their meds. We all help each other. It's just going over these examples. Like, you know, when this person needed Lipitor for her husband's cholesterol, they got some from this person. And this person needed anxiety meds for her son, so they got them from her. Rosie needed painkillers, and I had some, so I gave them to her.
You know, I get all that, but you don't do that with opioids. I get it with
No,
other
you don't.
stuff. Not something that's addictive that can kill you. So it's
Yeah, but anxiety medication can be just as dangerous depending on what it is too. Like you'd have to draw a line.
they're trying to make you feel bad for her, and it didn't work for me.
Neither
So
did I.
I think in this situation, it's a small town and everyone knows each other, right? So if you don't know that she's having issues with that and you know she just got knee surgery, which is true, like I can see you being like, she needs them. Like I have a few extra pills. You don't know that she's using them beyond like what she should. So, I mean, I get it. I'm not justifying it, but their relationship probably justifies it.
And they really fuck with my brain by picking like the sweetest actress in the world because I can't be mad at her, but I'm mad at her. I'm just like, damn it.
Well, it's just smart. I mean, like the casting is smart.
Yeah, but when she's like clearly fucked up still.
Yeah, but that's because of what she's going through now.
Yeah, she's not fucked up. She's destroyed. She feels guilty that she killed Roseanne.
Okay. I wasn't considering that. I thought she was like strung out on pills.
No, I didn't get that vibe at all. And he's saying, oh, so you're part of a neighborhood drug ring. Congratulations. And she's like, you know what? You can judge me, but Roseanne called me. She told me that her knee wasn't healing, and I was the only person that could help her. And she said she needed those pain pills to get back to work because you guys were running low on money. And now he's like, well, don't try to put this off on me. You gave her the pain pills. She took them. She died. You killed her. And then Darlene walks out and is like, Dad, stop. Like, we just found more pills. She had like a stash in the freezer. It's not just Marcy. Mom's been getting pills from different people.
That's a pretty big leap. Because they found a bag of pills, and this one's were in a baggie. I know, like Joe mentioned it earlier, how he'd give it she could have been putting them in just to stash them for emergencies out of Mary's. You don't know that.
Yeah, but I think if you're that beamed out, like, you're not thinking that.
But I mean, to hide some in the ice pack in the freezer, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're there's probably more to be found, or maybe there were found and we didn't hear it. Like maybe it was off camera, but maybe Daggie's like, I also found some here and here. But
Becky already got to them.
that's when Marcy's like, I would have never given them to her if I knew she had a problem. I know what it's like to have that problem. So I'm sorry. And the way she delivered that to like insinuate that she might be struggling too, like maybe that's why she didn't take her own pills. It was, I mean, again, it's just like the acting across the board in this episode. You have a lot of heavy hitters here.
I just say,
Oh, yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ. Like, this was the part that, like, killed me.
And yeah, and Dan's just like, Darlene, can you give Marcy a ride home? So he went from wanting to kill her to like, he's starting to put this into perspective. And you just kind of see him alone on the porch, just, you know, like head down on his arms, like just trying to figure this all out now, which cuts to like, I don't know, I'm assuming it's maybe 10 minutes later, the way the storyline would go. And now he's in the garage. Cause I'm assuming this is right when Darlene's coming back from driving Marcy home.
Yeah, I'd guess that.
And she sees, you know, her dad like in the garage, like kind of shining up his motorcycle. She's asking him if he's okay. He's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know who I'm supposed to be mad at right now. She's like, I thought Marcy was a pretty good choice until she ruined it by being all sad and human and stuff.
I felt the same way, man.
Yeah.
Now it's just like, I think he's coming to terms with it. She's saying like, I wish I knew like about all these extra pills. And he's like, it wouldn't have mattered. She was going to do what she was going to do. And she never listened to a damn person in her life. We get now, I'll tell you this, Sara Gilbert starts, you know, flexing her acting a little bit. She actually did a pretty good job here too. She's like, well, she should have because I still need her. Now she's starting to tear up a little bit, talking about how she wants to call her and say, how am I supposed to do any of this? And Dan goes, your mother once told me everything you needed, she gave you before you were 5. And she goes, I have no idea what that means. Like, yeah, I could never figure that out either. I think she got it from a Snapple cap.
I love this because Dan, this feels like 80s Roseanne Dan, right? Like he just throws this line off and like breaks the levity so well.
So speaking of Snapple caps, did you guys know Snapple has shared over 1,677 facts over 20 years?
I would have guessed more.
Weren't they all not true? Like, weren't some of them?
I actually have that.
A bunch are untrue. A bunch are just like crazy ambiguous too, where it's like, you can't prove that.
So yes, I have a very reliable source, Reader's Digest, here.
I will say that's a citable source that will give you that.
Yep. It says, oh, I clicked an ad. Nope. There we go. 12 Snapple cap facts that are actually false. I won't go into all 12 of them because...
Give us the top 3.
All right, so Snapple fact number 31. The average human eats 8 spiders in her lifetime while sleeping.
I've heard that. That came from a Snapple cap.
That came from a Snapple
See,
cap.
I always heard that was started as a rumor to prove how quickly an internet rumor could spread.
Oh, okay. Well, that doesn't go into the ethos, but it
John
says
Goodman did star as a spider killer in Arachnophobia, so I guess the whole thing kind of circles around.
But yeah, it's extremely unlikely that you'll even swallow one spider in your life. So you can rest easy. Number 2, the average human dream lasts only 2 to 3 seconds. Disproven because it's hard to know how to measure the real time of dream length, says Dr. Stick Gold told the Daily Meal.
Dr. Goldstick.
He's the one they call Dr. Goldstick.
Made of gold.
I love gold.
Coming up next to the stage, Dr. Goldstick.
The Statue of Liberty was the first electric lighthouse. Snapple fact number 179.
I used to know something called Electric Lighthouse. What was that?
Yeah, it was some crappy record label run by some moron. The actual Souter Souter lighthouse in the United Kingdom was actually the first lighthouse that uses electricity.
Cool.
Does it say anything about the flamingo one? That's the one I always remember where like flamingos are pink because they eat so much shrimp.
I don't see anything about flamingos, but I don't believe that is.
According to Google AI, it is true.
Isn't it from like the beta carotene and like...
Yeah.
shrimp or something.
Yes, flamingos get their pink color from eating shrimp, but not directly. Like there's more to it, and we can read about that another time. But
the one time I ate shrimp, I turned a pink color too, and I almost had to go to the emergency room because my throat closed.
Did you go to see Dr. Goldstick?
Dr. Goldstick had a way of making it all better. It's shrimp good. I've never been able to have the one time I literally ever tried it. I bit it. My tongue and my throat swelled up. I never tasted it.
It can
Is
be
it good?
It can
I think
be
it's
good.
disgusting, but you can't go by me with foods because I'm very picky.
I always wanted to try popcorn shrimp. That always looked appealing.
It's anything deep fried is good. When someone had popcorn shrimp, I think I had it Long John Silver's. It was pretty good. But yeah, popcorn shrimp is good, and I sometimes like shrimp and Alfredo sauce. That's complements really.
I
well.
love shrimp scampi. I like shrimp
Yeah.
cocktail. I just got into shrimp, I'd say, in the past decade, maybe.
Yeah, shrimp and sushi. My family usually Christmas Eve we have like a baked stuffed shrimp. Shrimp as a Chinese food appetizer is always great. You can get lobster sauce with shrimp.
Shrimp can be too like gritty sometimes. I feel like the larger the shrimp, sometimes the grittier it can get.
I feel like I'm doing a podcast with Bubba from Forrest Gump right now.
Something bit me.
But yeah, shrimp is good. Shrimp is good. I like shrimp. I used to have them as pets.
Isn't there something about there's like a line of feces in them?
Yes, there is. You have to
That's what
devein
Dwight
them.
says.
Yeah,
When he's at
there is.
the dinner party.
Yeah.
He goes, "See that line?
Yeah,
That's feces."
yeah.
Yep. It runs up the.
That should be
the
a
back of
Snapple
them.
fact.
Anyways, to get back into this episode here. Next scene we have Darlene like kind of exiting the garage, walking into the kitchen, and Jackie's standing there, and like the kitchen's a mess from this. Like she's trying to figure out where everything goes, and in her manic state, it's just she's created a tornado in the house. She's going, there's no place for the corn holders. They're not cooking tools. They're not utensils. I tried putting them with the Jell-O molds. That made no damn sense. I think utensils where I think I keep mine.
You put them in the side part where you
Yeah, the little
keep.
small part.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's either there or I could see them in like the
junk drawer.
like the weird, not the junk drawer, but like the weird shape. Like we have like a lemon squeezer or
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
like pizza cutter, like all like that drawer full of stuff. I could see a little cup of those in there.
All that stuff's with my utensils. It's just in front of it, and then I have the utensil
Yeah.
holder.
You like my pizza cutter and those kinds of, they're in a separate drawer from the utensils.
Yep.
But the corn holders are like with the utensils because that thing doesn't fill the whole drawer. So then you throw the rest of the bullshit in the, just the actual drawer.
I don't eat corn on the cob, so I don't have corn holders.
I don't use corn holders anymore. Ever since I bit one by accident, it was like in sideways, and it didn't stab me or anything.
Well,
but it
Ferg, you're
hurt
not
my
supposed to
tooth.
eat it the long way.
Yeah, what are you, Goldberg?
I am Goldberg.
Fergberg. I don't need those to eat corn on the cob, though. It's not, just let it cool down for a second.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah, I was gonna say I like corn on the cob, but I haven't used one of those holders in probably 20 years. Yeah.
No, but that was one of those things like when those, first off, like almost every house, or at least like our parents' generation,
Everybody had them. Yep.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
one of those things like when those things came out, people were probably like, this is innovation.
oh great, I can burn my mouth now.
Yeah.
Man, to own the patent on those, huh?
I've been wondering how I can go about eating corn when it's still way too fucking hot.
It's one of those things where you find yourself like in a mall. Like I'll always, if we go to the mall up here, like I don't know, every few months or something to get something, I'm always like, oh, can we go to Spencer's? Because it's just so fun to walk around and see what fucking insanity Spencer's is selling. And there's always like
yeah.
17 different like it's a
Dildos?
guy and his dick is what goes into the corn. Like there's like so many like novelty corn on the cob things
And t-shirts.
and a lot of t-shirts.
Yeah, a lot of t-shirts.
Dildos and t-shirts.
Yeah, dildos, t-shirts, and lava lamps. What a weird business that is.
So to transition to what's one of the saddest deliveries of the episode, you have Jackie now, and Darlene's like, it's okay, like, don't worry about those. And she's like, I just wanted to step in, like, and pick up where Roseanne left off and give you guys everything that you need. But I'm just looking for things to do. I'm packing and unpacking drawers. Nothing belongs anywhere. And then she goes, I don't even know where I belong. She's like, and then she just starts, like, she breaks down. She's like, I don't want to go home. I don't want to leave this house. I don't want to leave her. Like, I feel like if I leave this house, I leave her. And she's like, oh, Like I got a little teary eyed when she had this line. Like it was this hurt.
I did too.
But again, she's such a great actor that she can cut the scene and go right into comedy after it so fucking well. And like she always did so in the original Roseanne, you know?
You know, Darlene's like, it's okay. Like you just go home, get some sleep. I'll be here. It's like, yeah, but you need my help. She's like, no, I'll be fine. Just, don't worry. Like you can call me. And, they hug. She's like, it hurts. She's like, I know it's going to hurt for a while. It's like, no, the corn holders. And I was like, so when she went to hug her, she's still holding the corn holders. And it was like, what a smart, because this was such an intense scene. And like, it was the perfect
a smart way to get out of it. Yeah.
Smart way to get out of it in a way that was like, again, we're using jokes, but we're not using like these goofy yuck, like sitcom-y jokes. It's just like a legit funny, she forgot to put down the corn holders and she's stabbing her in the back while she's hugging her.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's realistic and it's still funny enough to like, put some levity on the moment.
Yeah, I loved it.
It's weird that she's like, I don't want to go home. And Darlene's answer is, go home. Like, let us stay. Let us sleep on her wet couch.
Jackie would sleep on the wet couch.
Yeah, but I guess it's very similar to Dan not wanting to sleep in his room. You do have to eventually. It's been 3 weeks, right? There's a point where you need to like face this.
I figured the show would end up with her coming to live there, but I don't think that happens.
Not to go ahead, but they definitely, especially now that they're winding things down and they're finding everyone's happily ever afters. You know what I mean? Like, but this is now,
good.
As we're approaching season 7. But from there, the next scene is Dan in the living room with Mark, and he calls him over. He's like, listen, my head wasn't in the game before, but now I really want to help you, which I think was like great. Like, and we went back and forth earlier of whether or not like this was like him not knowing how to deal with relationships or if it was the gay thing or what it was. But regardless, he's now approaching Mark saying, hey, listen, I wasn't ready for that conversation earlier, but now I want to help you. And he's like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through a list. He's like, I have a couple questions I want you to answer about both of them.
It shows too that he put thought and time and effort into it. So, he actually does care,
I loved this because this was like I didn't want to see the angry Dan with it and be left on that like sort of question mark. I like how they just resolved it. This episode got it out of the way. Good dude, perfectly acted, like master.
He's telling him like, all right, I want you to fill in the blank. So first we're going to answer these questions about Joey. Like, so Joey is, and Mark goes, mostly depressed and kind of sarcastic.
S1E1.
Yeah. I like him because he wears black all the time. Well, they say, a lot of guys are after someone who reminds them of their mom. That doesn't necessarily negate gay relationships.
That's true. Any relationship.
And then he's like, well, all right, so let's talk about, same questions, but Enrique. He's like, oh, he's sweet and funny. He's a robotics champ. He's always really fun. And he goes, does his family have money? Like, I don't know, but when they go on vacation, they come back with tans. Like Florida people. I love it.
I love that's the side of money. When they go on vacation, they come back and have tans. It's so fucking perfect to describe that.
Florida people. That's you, Ferg.
I wish.
Ferg's aspiring to be a Florida man.
I'll be a Florida man tomorrow, all right?
You'll be a Florida man this week for vacation, but you don't want to buy any property in Florida since it's probably going to be underwater within 20 years. That said, so is most of New York and Boston, I think, so I don't know. We're all fucked.
So we can finally afford a house. Yay.
Probably not.
Beachfront property.
Yeah.
Speaking of Florida, that was always my favorite episode of Roseanne when they go to Disney.
That's a good one.
I love on location in any show.
Yeah,
all those
out.
shows did it.
Step by Step did it. Full
They
House,
all went to like Disney too. Like everyone had a Disney episode.
Roseanne had that great one where they go to Vegas too.
Oh, ABC. I'm not even like putting two and two together. No wonder why they all went to fucking Disney.
Full House did it. I think Family Matters did it. That's when Urkel proposed.
Yeah. It makes so much more sense now.
Actually, now that you say that, it does.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about like contracts and companies at the time. It's like, wow, all these sitcoms love going to Disney.
Because I always think of Roseanne as a Fox show, and it's not.
Just because it has that grittiness of like Married with Children or whatever. Yeah. So Mark's saying, hey, thanks, Grandpa. This really helped. Like, so who's it going to be? He's like, I like Joey. Like, Joey, are you crazy? Enrique's a keeper. You don't leave an Enrique on the table when he's available. Like, still like Joey. And they walk into the kitchen and Darlene's making breakfast. And she's like, what's going on? Grandpa helped me pick a seat partner for the field trip. And he goes, he picked the dark brooding one. It's like, point for my team.
Lame.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice little thing to...
I am a sourpuss. I'm Team Enrique all the way.
Oh, I am too, but
Gonna go for the good guy.
Hey, you don't know Joey's a bad guy. He's just dark and brooding.
he's just misunderstood.
He stole a glass from a grieving widower.
Have you ever stolen a glass from a restaurant?
Yeah, but not the restaurant owner's wife didn't just die. Boom.
You don't know that. You weren't like, I'm sorry, Mr. Chili.
I did. I had a nice conversation with Giuseppe right before. I go, hey, how's your wife? He goes, oh, Ferg, she's a great.
Oh, I'm a steal your glass away.
So Becky walks in and goes, trust me, Mark, being around dark and brooding gets old real quick. And Darlene's like, yeah, how about growing up with a drama queen that thinks she's all that because she got boobs first? And then she goes, who got boobs at all?
Zing.
I do love that they're both in their 40s and like have that same relationship, though.
DJ, how about having two older sisters who suck the air out of the room until you're practically invisible? And then they do the, like, they pretend they don't hear him. Becky, did you hear something? No. Harris, did you hear anything? And she goes, don't drag me into your weird mind games. This turns into, like, as they're all walking in and Jackie's like, did anyone notice how much the flow is better now? And, like, this morphs into what becomes
The
opening for the rest of the season, which is that iconic going around the kitchen table as they're all eating.
This.
I did too. I loved that.
And I thought it was good that they were able to do it into the scene to transition. It was like really nice.
Yeah.
And kind of a good way to close out the episode. I guess for something like this in the situation, and we got into it in the beginning, to be able to go into this, like, this is a new version, but it's still like the Connors still exist. It was a good way to close that out. I do want to say too, after that, there is that one other scene to close out the post, like, credit scene.
Yeah, the stinger.
And that was tough. That was this goes back, we're talking again earlier. It's
this
like,
one was almost unnecessary.
Yeah.
I would have kind of rather them end on the high note of the intro.
This was a high note. It showed he was healing.
Yeah, but it was also really sad, just like the way he. So basically, what it is he's finally getting into bed after Roseanne has died, and he's sleeping alone, and he's just trying. He's like struggling to adjust to it, and like the very last scene as it fades to dark is just him like putting his arm where she used to be.
Yeah, that was a little extra. You didn't need that.
It was just so fucking depressing, and it was really well done, but like.
When he first got in the bed and he just looks over to her side and is just looking at it, like, that was like the, oh.
Could have laid in the middle. He can starfish for the first time in his life.
I can tell you from experience, you don't sleep on that side of the bed, even when they're not there. You don't.
It's time for a new mattress. I think you have to get a new mattress immediately.
Yeah.
Especially if she died there.
Yeah, she died like in bed, didn't she?
Yeah, you shit yourself when you die.
Well, all right.
Okay, just
Probably change the sheets.
That bed is far too small.
It is. It's like a full size with fucking Roseanne Barr.
That was like one of those double
John
twins.
Goodman in it. Yeah, it's probably a queen.
The joke in the episode where they buy the mattress is they're looking at one, and the mattress salesman looks at Dan and goes, "And for the lady."
Yeah, so that concludes the show. Again, I get it. For growth, I guess it's good to see him in, like, get that scene in where, but I think maybe it just would have been nice to just end with that. End with the new intro, and then maybe next episode.
You know what? At least they didn't have him talk to her in heaven. All right, because I may have broken down.
Yeah. Okay.
You just hear a harmonica from above.
It's funny. So just a couple things now that we've concluded, and before we kind of wrap things up. Roseanne said that having her character killed by an opioid overdose lent an unnecessarily grim and morbid dimension to an otherwise happy family show. And I was thinking, of all the demented things that Roseanne has said, did she think that show is an overall happy family show? Like, I think Rose, like the show you created is iconic as it is because it was so real and grounded in tragedy and stuff like that.
Although I don't totally disagree with her.
I mean, the family is happy and does love each other.
It's a super, super dark turn. And they could have done like a lot of other things,
Sure.
I guess.
But I just think her sentence there was almost like, "Our show's usually real happy." It's like, no, it's not.
No, they were struggling, but they always had the love. They were always a loving family, and they could get through anything. So I get it.
Yeah.
But that's what this episode was kind of about.
But she's saying her death, having to die by opioid.
Sounds like this was on in my kitchen the other day, and it was they were on a job site with Dan's company. He found out that Becky was drinking on the job.
Yeah,
And I'm like, he like
shook the
shakes
bottle?
it. Yeah.
I got that reel the other day.
So that like they never really get off the gas with this whole like addiction thing. They put it on to Becky and kind of let it ride, which is strange. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I would watch. I'd have to keep watching it to see, but it seems
that's a big story. That's a big like plot line is her recovery and addiction, but yeah, that's all obviously for the future. I'll say this because I don't want to go too long, but I feel like this episode wasn't necessarily about just selling you on a new show because it's so weird because this really wasn't a true series premiere.
They're selling you the show without Roseanne.
Yes,
is what they're doing.
So they're showing you something. So they're not. They weren't trying to show you like that. Like, look at this brand new show, but it was more like we're showing you that Roseanne can live without Roseanne in it, and we're doing that based on the strength of the cast. And I do feel like on that merit, they did that here. It's like as far as watching a new show for the first episode, and that's where I think like when we rate at the end, it's kind of tricky depending on how you want to look at it. It's like, is it a good episode of television versus is this a good episode 1 of a new show? It's really kind of we'll talk about that in a moment.
Now, question: how did this show do compared to the reboot without her? I like ratings wise. I'm sure this first episode, out of curiosity, a lot of people tuned into, but and this went 7 seasons, so clearly people watched. But compared to Roseanne, how are the numbers?
So if you look at it, season 10, when it first comes back, has 18 million viewers, right? But by the time it's over, like midway through, it's 9 episodes. From episode 6 on, they've already gone down into the 10s. So you're
still isn't bad.
No, not at all. But you're at 10 point something million. And then what happens? So the Connors comes back basically immediately. It's like even though it's a new sitcom, it's basically the very next season. That one comes in, and then when you look at its premiere, I mean, it takes a dip. It's not as strong as the Connors, but it's 10.5 million. So basically, episode 1 of the Connors didn't do any less than the last half of the season of Roseanne before it.
I'm surprised. I figured a lot of people would tune into at least this episode. I wonder what they did about Roseanne.
But the same people who were curious to just watch Roseanne in general,
Yeah.
That first couple episodes, and people, I mean, it did shrink down pretty quick. And then by the end of the first season, we lose a few million. It's kind of hovering like around 7 million. So it's going down, but it's not necessarily going down in a way that's more extreme than if this was another season of Roseanne based on how much it dropped originally, right? So, and it's tough to say. We'll never know exactly. The Connors is also on like every streamer. So it's like, I think a lot of people are watching it either on Hulu or on Peacock. So I don't know how those numbers really get factored in the same way. But yeah, Roseanne had a big interest when it first comes back, dips a lot by the second half, and kind of looks like it just kind of took its natural fall that even if Roseanne was still in it, to be honest. But who's to say? I can only speculate. Last thing I want to say, I don't know if you guys have any points, but I'm not saying that Roseanne without Roseanne, it's just like, whatever. Like, it's a huge loss, right? The Connors can't exist without Roseanne because Roseanne built this whole world, This is her world. She's just no longer part of it. Luckily, they had so much framework and it's so deep that they could kind of continue on and just like AI could probably write a good episode of Roseanne at this point. There's just so much context to pull from. In a weird way, to me, watching the Connors with Roseanne gone doesn't feel, I know it's the thing we always bring up. To me, this doesn't feel as much of there being a hole missing as The Office without Michael felt to me. Like, it just feels like, it still feels like the same world, you know, and The Office I felt took such a shift once he left.
I disagree, but
I disagree too, Jay. I don't know. Maybe it's just me and Joe, or maybe it's Jay.
No, I'm with you guys.
I don't. Your perception of The Office post Michael is really strange. Yeah, it doesn't have Michael, but it's definitely still The Office. Like,
the tone is completely different. I
disagree.
I think you could still enjoy it, but I think the tone is vastly different.
See, for me, it was more this show. Like, after watching every season of regular Roseanne, it's just, there's an empty spot for me without her there. It's like her jokes to cut the tension. And
right, and that's why I wanted to watch at least one episode of the reboot, you know, like, so I watched the first episode to kind of compare. Kind of, if I had more time in the day, I probably wish I had watched the last episode of season 10 into that to see how it transitions. Because again, I've said it a million times, I don't want to keep harping on it. It's unfair to call this an S1E1 because it really is just the next season of Roseanne, just Roseanne's not in it. I don't know if any of you guys have anything you want to say, but we can get into the green light or cancel. All right, Joe, go ahead. Starting with you.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this one short just because I'm fading quick here. I think what you just said, it's not technically an S1E1, but it's Roseanne without Roseanne. But I love Roseanne, and the thing you love about that show isn't just her. It's the whole family, so it's hard for me to not enjoy this, even if I wish it just was another season of Roseanne. I wish someone just took her fucking phone away, and she just never did what she did, but I'm not mad. I watched all of this. I'll watch the last season. It's a green light for me.
Ferg.
yeah, I don't like the existence of this show. It really rubs me the wrong way. So I'm trying to not focus on that, but it's still going to be a cancel for me. The show without Roseanne is just a sad show about a grieving family that's poor. And it's like, it's not that Roseanne, oh, we're poor, but it's funny. It's just like sad. And watching this just made me sad. Because we do S1E1, it's like, this is all I got of this show for covering. So to go into the show and just be sad the whole time with a couple moments that brought me up, that's not enough for me to pass the show, unfortunately. I love the other cast members, but I never watched Roseanne for them. I watched Roseanne for Roseanne. Darlene was always one of my favorite characters. And Jackie, like I said, I don't like the new version of her. Man, I'd almost watch just for Dan because I fucking love him. But unfortunately, it just wasn't enough, so cancel from me.
Nick.
I do agree with a few things Ferg said. It was overtly depressing, and I'm not really sure they needed to do it that way. I love the rest of the cast, honestly. Maybe not so much like the kid. Not that I dislike the kids. I'm just wondering if there's maybe too many people at a certain point. It feels like there's too many characters sometimes. Especially like when they're in the kitchen and there's like 10 people in the kitchen, and it's not just people who are like visiting. Like they're all like main characters on the show, and it can feel a little overwhelming. But having said that, I feel that this show is doing this episode and moving on, or I hope that's the way it goes anyways. And in that hope, I'm greenlighting it because I feel like all the bones, yeah, you can't replace Roseanne. Like that goes without saying. Try as you might, it can't happen. But I feel like they do a good enough job of plugging the hole. And I am curious enough to see how they keep doing that. So yeah, it needs work. There are some issues. It's not the hardest green light, but at the end of the day, I can't cancel it. There's too much nostalgia, and there's too much, hope behind it that I think that it could be a good show. So it's a green light.
Gordo.
I can't cancel this show. This feels like a transition to a new season. Well, no, it feels like a transition to a new series. And I think because if I wasn't familiar with all the characters, I don't think it would be too dark, right? But because I am familiar with the family, I am familiar with everybody on the show and the cast and their dynamic, I'm gonna pass it because I know it still will be good. Others have said Roseanne is Roseanne, not just because of her, but because of John Goodman and because of the rest of the supporting cast. So green light from me.
Yeah, so for me, this is where I struggled the most, right? I think this is a phenomenal episode of television. And then it's also, if this was the first time I was introduced to the show, I'd be like, this show is a little too depressing. But like I said in the beginning, I feel like it's a known thing that you're supposed to at least know the last season of Roseanne. Even if you didn't watch all of Roseanne in its original run, they were expecting anyone watching the Conners to have at least watched the season of Roseanne before that. And as we talked about the ratings, it looks like that's exactly what happened, because you didn't get a single new viewer out of curiosity. It was just people who were already watching Roseanne since its comeback. With that in mind, I'm leaning towards the green light. I really thought hard about it, because there was a big part of me that wanted to cancel despite loving the episode, just because I felt like this is a weird first impression. But it's such a unique situation where I think the context is that you understand what already happened, that this is it has to be this way to start the show. It's super dark. It's sad. It's a weird way to intro a S1E1 of anything. I don't think we'll ever catch a first episode that's as sad. And we have canceled shows for having so many dark topics in a first episode. But that's coming in like fresh. And here we're supposed to know a little bit more. You almost wish that this was like a non-counted episode that exists, and then they have episode 1, Like, all right, they're grieving, and now the Conners starts. So you can kind of get into their life beyond. But obviously they have to mourn. And I think, regardless of the situation with Roseanne and how she might feel about the cast, I think this is a very, in a way, it's a very loving way to send her off, to see the family torn and to see what she meant to everybody. So I think it's kind of good in a way. So with that being said, it's going to be 4 out of 5. So congratulations to the Conners. You two live on to see another episode with us. I want to thank Shane again for picking this one. We've been dancing around it forever. We didn't know how to do it. So you kind of ripped the bandage off us and made us just fucking do it. So thank you. Thank you to anyone who participated. We have one more week of January ahead. I want to remind you guys, go to S1E1pod.com. That's where you can find all the links to everything, where you can buy a t-shirt. Maybe there'll be a new one by the time this episode comes out, depending on my schedule. So we'll see how that goes. But thanks, guys, for listening. Catch us again next week. We close out January. And for all episodes in the future, if you're new to us, go back and listen to some old ones. But until then, thank you. Goodbye.
I think we got the best dildos, t-shirts, and lava lamps.